the name of our show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Large Glass. My name is Todd.
I'm Terri.
And this is our weekly show where we bring you a new artist to talk to in their studio. How's it going?
Yes. How's it going?
Yes. How's it going? So we have some cool stuff going on, but we have a lot to talk about first.
We do.
Yeah.
Quite a few things.
For example, this is the week of dropping the ball.
We knew it was going to happen.
We've officially named it the week of dropping the ball.
We overbooked ourselves.
Like absurdly overbooked ourselves. And we've got some people in the audience I think we should say hi to.
Yes.
So who's here?
Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Nice to see you. Pumpkin Audrey.
Pumpkin Audrey.
Audrey, thanks for dinner.
Thank you for dinner. Chicken francaise with some sautéed broccoli and potatoes.
Homemade. It was lovely.
So yummy.
It was lovely. Ben Hagenbush is here. Hey, Ben. How's it going? Joseph Barbacci is here with the TNT. And Marsolis, hey.
Hey.
Welcome back. Thanks for modding tonight. Marsolis is our fearless modder who
Thank you very
is
much.
ready to cut you out of the chat if you misbehave.
That's right.
So let's see. What did we drop the ball on exactly?
I forgot about the contest this week for Thursday, so I will make sure I do that this coming Thursday. The Name the Artist, where we feature an artist detail. You guess who painted it. Bonus points if you can figure out what piece it came from. But yeah, whoops, sorry. I'll get better. You know what? We've got like 6 more weeks to go, and then I'm done with school, and you're done with school, and we have more time to dedicate to this program and to artwork in general, which I'm so excited about. I've got this big agenda to start plein air painting this summer and to just dive right in.
Well, and I got to tell you, I'm excited about that too, because we've got some really interesting plans in the works from possibly, I've been talking about this for a while, but nonprofit, looking at some larger ventures and ways in which we can expand into more interesting little avenues. Alan Wexler is here. Hi, guys.
Hey,
back from
Alan.
California and looking forward to hearing about John's work. Good to have you, Alan. Nice to see you. Jamie Foster is here.
Hey, Jamie.
Good to see you. Boo Jazz is here. John Park is here. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yes.
So we talk a lot about 100 and Art Tour.
Yes.
And what's going on with that. Do you want to give a shout out to Whittemore?
We certainly can. So Whittemore is one of our partners, and it's Whittemore CCC. It stands for Community, Culture, and Conservation. If you go online to whittemoreccc.org, you'll see a whole bunch of information from volunteering to summer camps to after-school programs, plus a lot of different activities. You could do nature walks, meditation. They have Tai Chi, yoga, Pilates, but they also have a lot of cultural exhibits and concerts. They do host part of the 100 and Art Tour. I know on their calendar coming up, they've got a couple big things. On April 23rd, they have a kickoff spring garden concert featuring a band called Cat Moon Daddy. On April 30th, which is actually the weekend of the 100 and Art Tour, they have the Spring Garden Concert Series featuring Mama D and the Vexations. And then also the opening reception for the 100 and Art Tour will be held there on April 30th as well.
Which is going to be exciting. And we'll have more details about what they're exactly featuring in their schedule as we get closer to that time. Jess Park is here and Glenn Lavertu are also here.
Hi.
So nice to see both of you. Should we open our drinks?
We can open our drinks.
Should we go to Beer Cam?
Beer Cam. It's
Normally-
just like cocktail
This
cam.
is normally Cocktail Cam, but
Only
tonight we have Beer Cam
beer.
because we decided with John Roach, our artist this evening, we decided to go with an IPA. Now, I wasn't able to locate the IPA he did, which I'm a little jealous of because the label on that thing was fantastic. But instead, I went to an old standard from Stone, which is Fear Movie Lions. Fear Movie Lions, or some kind of cheap and excuse-riddled acronym for FML, or a filler for the acronym FML, which seems appropriate at this time. So, yeah, for what it's worth,
Yeah.
FML.
Those are big cans.
These are big cans.
What about
Desperate
the
times.
sound on that? Is there going to be sound or not
No,
really?
I don't think there's never good sound on the beer.
Which
There's
is funny.
always good sound on the wine. One for you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to open one for me. Let's put this in the proper location.
There we go.
Little spillage there.
We don't want spillage.
Don't mind the spillage. And we...
A little frothy.
I'm a little frothy, yes. We are ready to roll. Anyway, episode
82.
82.
Haven't missed a single one.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to John Roach tonight, episode 82. Let us know what you're drinking in the chat. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm going to try and get through this monstrous head. Jess Park says, love the coasters. I do too. I think they're so cool. We have 4 of them. And I'm very much into, well, first of all, not as much as our artist tonight, but I'm very much into audio and vinyl and tube amps and all that good stuff. And so the coasters fit.
That's actually pretty good.
So let's see. Joseph Barbaccia is having a Merlot tonight. Boo Jazz, a glass of Tenjaku blended Japanese whiskey. How come you always have the best drink? Pumpkin Audrey has a gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic.
Carolyn Thau is here. Carolyn, if you just got here, you just missed our whole thing.
We plugged you.
We plugged Whittemore. So, but welcome.
Welcome.
Nice to have you. Let's see. So we're excited about having John on the show tonight, and I hope you are too. If you are here on either Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook, please, please, please give us a follow. We would love to have you join us, and you'll hear each week about when we're going live. We bring you a new artist each week. We've got a fantastic lineup coming. Let's see. Next week, we've got Jessica Brilli. Mm-hmm. The week after that, we have Ken Rush.
Yes.
The week after that, we have Sherry Biddle. So I'm super excited about everyone we've got. And we're booked further out than that. We've got a lot of great artists coming.
Yep.
So follow us because you'll get a notification when we're going on. You can get our newsletter and hear about, Terri writes some great things about our artists as we're sort of prepping for the day. So let's see. Bonbon76 is having sour cherry martini for Bonbon.
I know who
I like that.
Hey, Bonnie.
You know who that is?
Yeah, it's my Canadian friend.
Ah,
Yes.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hey, Bonnie.
Let's see. Apex Predator Farmhouse Ale for Jamie Foster. That sounds awesome. Mocktails for John and Jess tonight. That's okay. We like that. It's all about the spirit of the thing.
Yes. Can I just say, though, that I really miss the birthdays, and I just want to point out it's Yayoi Kusama's birthday today, as well as Agnes Martin and Anthony Van Dyke.
Agnes.
So I think on the Tuesday nights, if there's a birthday, I'm going to mention it.
Well, I think we should...
I miss the birthdays.
Look, the Instagram is lagging right now, and it's just because...
It's just for the next 5 weeks. I will try harder once this classes are over.
Right, and it's really just a matter of that. But that's where our birthdays really shine.
Yeah,
you do a nice job there.
It's true.
So, but yeah, Agnes Martin, Yayoi Kusama. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And who was the other one?
Van Dyke.
Ah, excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Glenn is saying bring back the birthdays. And I'll tell you.
I know, right?
Stephen LaPuma from the Court Tree Collective in Brooklyn was saying to bring back the news.
Yeah.
So.
They were fun segments.
They
I thought that they were cool.
Yeah, but our show was an hour and a half long.
I know. Nobody wanted to hang out, I don't think, for that
People
long,
were just like, shut up, you guys.
Okay.
All right. So why don't we start to introduce tonight's artist?
We can.
And
I want to point another thing out.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, you're going to say
I don't think we're going to point out the same thing, so
All right,
why don't
so
you
you
go
first.
ahead? No, because this is all related to this. So.
Okay, so tonight's artist, John Roach, is actually going to be doing a lot in our show with audio. So if you're watching on a tablet, if you're watching on your phone, if you're watching on a laptop, or if the TV set that you're watching on has the capability of putting on headphones, we recommend it. It's not mandatory, but you get a really, really good immersive sense of the sound if you have headphones on. So this is your opportunity to go and get those. And that's what I was going to say. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say something similar. We always talk about having artists that we've already featured in the flesh back on our show, and I want to point out that John's going to be the first one that we have done that with.
That's
in the flesh.
true.
Actually, to go even further, he was the first artist that we had live on our show back in December 2020.
Was he live for the sketchbook
He
show?
was live for. Wasn't he joining us live?
Well, he was in the chat room.
He was in the chat.
He was in the chat room.
That's true.
We did a show called Sketchbook Spin.
Yes.
And John's sketchbooks are fantastic and not featured on tonight's show, but you should check them out.
Yeah.
And that's how we had him on.
And that's how we had him on.
You might be confused about the live thing because after the show was over,
that's why
we got on a Zoom call.
He came on in the green room and we chatted. And I feel like it was part of the show, but perhaps you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was still there. So you're technically right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's back on. So we first introduced you to him back in December 2020. It was episode 12 called Sketchbook Spin. So he came on for that. Earlier that year, Todd and I had seen David Byrne, American Utopia. We visited John in Long Island City for his show.
That's right.
That was called Frozen Words. Mm-hmm. That was a very interesting installation involving sound, glass, neon, Donald Trump's speeches, and it was all juxtaposed together so that you were on a ship and there was ice breaking around, and it was like this really fantastic immersive experience.
It was really a fantastic show.
It really was. So John has a bachelor's in English from Rutgers in 1992.
So does she.
So do I. I can finally say, me too. He also has an MFA from Hunter College in 1996. He's been featured in numerous solo and group exhibitions, and he's been featured in numerous publications, including the Brooklyn Rail, New York Times, Washington Post, Art in America, Hyperallergic. He's curated several shows and has also hosted selected performances, workshops, and lectures. He has completed multiple residencies. He most recently completed a residency at Zion National Park in Utah, which we will be chatting about tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Roach.
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Hey there, everybody. Good to see you.
How's it going?
Good. I'll show you all that can, which is just so beautiful.
I know.
And it just seemed like just the right sort of arty.
Yeah, it's like a little
It's
window.
almost like a Terrell or something.
Yeah,
it's like a James Terrell.
Yeah.
Terrell meets Magritte beer.
There you go.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
By the way, we mentioned this before, but I love how our backgrounds match. I thought we should just point that out again. And also, I will say this, in the entire history of this show, John is going to be our first guest that's got some genuinely pro audio associated with the mic. So this one's going to sound good. I'm just excited about that. So, but welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. We're really excited to have you.
So happy to be back. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invite.
So you kick us off, Terri.
Well, a couple of things. If you have any questions for John, we just want to remind you to type them in the chat. We will get to them as we see them. And John, how we've been starting off with the live artists is to basically, we know what you do, but our audience may not be completely familiar with you. So usually we have the artist describe the work and what it is that you do.
Sure. So, my work, I always have a struggle trying to describe what I do because I do a little bit of everything. So even for this, what I'm going to show you tonight, which was a lot of it is about a residency I did at Zion National Park. I called myself an interdisciplinary sound artist. And part of that is because, you hear sound artist and it's sort of, well, that could be, what is that exactly? Are you doing podcasts? What is that? So the interdisciplinary part is always kind of important for me because I sort of always sound is at the core of my investigation, but the work can take all kinds of different forms. So, it could be like the piece you saw, which was an installation with sound. It could be pieces even that are just drawing based, but sound is kind of this core inquiry in the work.
Gotcha. I'm curious about one thing. I just want to interrupt for a second. Is your phone near your mic by any chance?
Oh, are you getting some?
I'm getting some kind of feedback that's coming through.
Yeah, let me see. How's that?
I don't know. We'll find out as we go.
I think that's better already.
It might have fixed it, but it just seemed like something was transmitting through the wire. So this is good. So oftentimes when, when I think about your work, John, and what I've seen on your website, what I see you posting on Instagram, and I love, some of the performative aspects of what you do. What we're going to talk about tonight is very different. Like you just completed a residency, and we're really going to focus in that realm. Can we talk a little bit just in general about what that residency is and the image that we're seeing on the screen and how all that relates?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. This residency was actually a really different opportunity for me. So I'm on sabbatical right now, and prior to my sabbatical, I sent out. I applied for tons of residencies, and 3 of them landed. So I've got 3 things lined up. One is Zion, which is I just completed, and then another one in Wyoming, and another one in Michigan. And so Zion was really, I usually take the opportunity through doing a residency to do something that I've wanted to do, but maybe it's a little bit different. Like it's always kind of an opportunity for me to kind of push out in a direction of, and something that I want to cultivate that maybe I didn't have the time to do otherwise, as opposed to kind of rehashing some of the things that I've done before. So in the instance of Zion, what I pitched to them was essentially this idea of thinking about this idea of preservation in relation to sound. One of the things about the national parks is that many of them have these artist in residence programs. And part of it is because, when these parks were founded, in many cases, the reason people even knew what they looked like was because artists, you talked about plein air painting, it was because artists were going and they were painting these places. And, in the case of Zion, it was images like this that convinced the folks in Washington to secure that as first a national monument and then a national park. So it really was this idea of preservation. But, for the most part, they've focused a lot on painters. They've had a couple of other kinds of artists in there too. But so for them, I think to think about someone talking about sound and talking about really capturing and kind of preserving something about the sound of that place was appealing for them.
So,
and so if you don't know, yeah, go ahead, Todd.
No, I was just going to say, I've watched what you've put forth, but was there a time when you were out at Zion already doing this kind of work that sort of spurred thinking about it in terms of a longer, more formal residency?
Well, I mean, one thing, 10 years ago, I took a trip with my family. We took a huge cross-country trip, and one of the stops was in Zion. And so Zion is in southern Utah, which you can see is the star there. And there was just one experience that we had there, and I had my recorders with me, but really casually, like I wasn't there to make art. We were there to have fun and do hikes and stuff. But I happened to have my recorder in this place called the Narrows. And the Narrows is this incredible, like just this slot canyon that carves, millennia, the river had carved this gorge essentially. And there was this one moment where and it's a sort of always present, this sort of white noise of that river, because it's just sort of bouncing along those walls. And these ravens were just having this conversation in the canyon, and it just stuck with me, like the way that they could communicate above this sound. So at first I just really loved the sound of it, but then it really became apparent to me, like they in some ways are kind of designed to be able to speak over this river, and that was really fascinating, and that really kind of launched me into thinking about, well, how maybe could I deepen this and think a little bit more broadly about Zion and the park and other places in the park too.
Right. And we have a recording here of that, don't we?
Yeah, there's a little clip there.
All right. So if you listen carefully, if you turn up your volume a little bit, or if you have headphones on, I've got an example of this. Let me play that for you. Beautiful. I love that. It's such a there's almost a human quality to the way that they're yelling to each other. Um, so this was the original recording, the one that sort of inspired the whole proposal.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I was really interested in doing, one was just getting out and doing a bunch of recording and just looking at different spots that I might be able to capture sound. But another thing I was also really interested in was this idea of interviewing people and kind of capturing the human part of the park too. I think there's a real tendency with these national parks to sort of document them in whatever medium as if people don't exist, as if they're like the same park it was, a million years ago. And it's, you know what? This is a park that has had 5 million people visit. That's like their peak in this last year. They had 5 million people visit the park. And so the kind of human aspect and the human impact and the history of humans in that place was also something really important that I wanted to highlight in the work.
Which is both wonderful and problematic for the park, I would imagine, right? I mean, wonderful in the sense that we get to see the wonder of the park, and problematic because I don't know if it was ever intended to have that kind of traffic, but that's a whole different story. So I'm going to advance through a couple of things here. So you start thinking about this proposal.
Yeah. So, one of the things I was interested in doing, and again, this idea that I like to propose things that it's sort of like almost proposing things a little bit out of my reach, like things that I really want to work on. And I've been doing a lot of work with immersive sound lately, but this idea of really thinking about immersive surround sound, multi-channel sound at a site, like go out, record stuff, come back, edit it, push it around in space. Like I had never done anything that immediate. And so I was really these are just some fun sketches that I was doing, just trying to imagine sound energy in this place. So the place I was staying, which is called the Grotto House, I basically used, there's one room in that house, which is a studio essentially. And so I made a bunch of speakers, which we'll take a look at in a minute. But I basically crafted speakers for this space. Mm-hmm. And it was a space where I was able to kind of audition this work as I was doing it. But the other thing, the next slide is there's some projects that I'm super obsessive about researching before. And this is just like a mural board that I did where I was just kind of trying to dig into everything, like being super prepared before I went, because I knew once I was there, I was not going to have a lot of opportunity. I was going to be, off the grid in many ways. So it was getting in, trying to understand who I could contact ahead of time, who could I interview. And that really paid off. Like, I think doing all of this preparatory work was fantastic because I lined up tons of interviews. I really got a sense of the history before I went. And of course, as is always the case, I planned way more and researched way more than I could accomplish there. And I kind of like that too, because it's this kind of, there's this stuff that's still part of my thinking about the work, even though maybe it might not be evident in the work itself.
Right.
And so lots of, research about what kind of equipment was I going to bring? How was I going to do my recording, et cetera.
It's funny, there's an equipment related question that just showed up in the chat from Joseph Barbaccia. He's wondering what application you use to edit sound, which I know is a much more complicated answer than he thinks it is, but you want to answer that in general?
Yeah, there'll be a slide about it a little bit later, but it's an excellent question because one of the things, I use so many different things, but because I was working really specifically with surround sound, multi-channel sound, I wanted to dip into something called ambisonics, which I can talk about in a little bit. I wanted to really learn how to use this digital audio workspace or DAW called Reaper. And Reaper is amazing and it's super cheap. It's like, free for 6 months or something like that. And then it's like $60 or $80 or something like that. And super duper powerful. So that was really what I was using. And for me, it was this was just an excuse to get to know it better. Gotcha. So that was another thing I was learning while in the middle of a canyon. I'm learning how to,
that's what I was going to say. You got this crazy technology out in the middle of nowhere. So this is your cabin.
Yeah, so this is this amazing place called the Grotto House, which is, smack in the middle of the Scenic Drive. And the Scenic Drive is like the most visited part of Zion National Park is enormous, but this particular path really cuts through the canyon and has all of these incredible views. The grotto happens to be kind of the starting place for a lot of people, because it's the starting place to go to Angel's Landing, which is one of the most famous hikes in Zion, where you're hanging onto chains to go on these sheer cliffs and stuff. It's totally bonkers. So this is apparently also the oldest surviving park structure in the park. So it was, I think, from the 1920s. And it's all hewn out of the red stone of that canyon. So it's just, you're in this place and it's just massive blocks of this red stone.
Oh, I thought this was a log cabin when I looked at it, but it's actually stone.
Giant pieces of stone.
Fantastic. So here we are.
Yes. So I knew obviously I could not bring 8 speakers and a subwoofer with me on the airplane. So I brought instead a bunch of speaker drivers, which you see on the bottom right. And I went to, hate to even say the word, but I went to Walmart and I bought a bunch of packing boxes, and I bought a bunch of polyfill, which is the kind of stuff you stuff quilts with. And I crafted these 8 speakers. And really kind of I did some tests in my studio, but I really wasn't going to be sure how good it was going to function until I had this thing set up, and it performed pretty beautifully. I was amazed.
Yeah, I always wondered, you and I built some speakers together a while back for a project you were doing, and when I saw you incorporating the cardboard, I wondered if the inherent flimsiness of the cardboard.
Well, even the corrugated qualities, because those are pockets for sound to travel through differently.
It could be. I just wondered how the cardboard would perform.
Yeah, I think if they were hollow, it would have been a nightmare. But the fact that they were packed with all of this sort of fibrous stuff, the sound kind of wheedles its way through it, and it tends to make the essentially what it does is it expands the box. Like, it makes it as if the box were much bigger and the sound is traveling farther through that cavity. So that sort of dampening was really helpful. Gotcha. The subwoofer felt the problems of cardboard, because you can imagine big bass is gonna
vibration.
It'll do some funny stuff. But I actually jammed some big sofa cushions in there because I didn't have enough polyfill. So I took some sofa cushions and stuffed those in there. But it worked pretty well too. Nice. I got a pretty good sense of it.
That's great. Quickly, Glenn Lavertu is asking a question. He says, I know John has done drawings that are mechanical, diagrammatic proposals. Does he consider those as works unto themselves? And if so, I'm wondering if he has any interest in presenting drawings, musical notation, as a way to encapsulate / finalizing the projects.
I've always thought I would do that, and for whatever reason I never have. I mean, I don't know what it is. There's something about just kind of working in the sketchbook that is a process thing, even though the images are generally pretty finished. A lot of them are not sort of, doodly sketches or anything, but I've never actually sort of ripped them out and sort of presented them separately. Yeah. I am interested in that idea of a score, though. You kind of seem to be alluding to this idea of almost like a graphic score. I am really interested in that too, that they provide kind of another guide and another entry point into the work. Because I think, much of what I do, I think the sound can be experienced one way. The sketches are kind of a way in as well. Sometimes there's video components, sometimes there's objects, and I think they all kind of add a little bit to the story. I think in this particular case, it's funny because I brought a lot of stuff to draw there, and I assumed I would, and I did not. There was something really different about this experience, that it was just all about listening, and it was all about getting out and recording. And I kept looking at all these materials I brought, and I was like, maybe tomorrow. Nope, not tomorrow. It just never happened.
Do you think the season had something to do with it too? Because you're out there in the middle of winter, and it's also, COVID was still kind of running around like crazy, so it's not as many visitors. And some of the scenes that you've shown us, they're kind of quiet. Do you think any of that had something to do with not sketching as much? I know that you went out there with the sound, but
yeah. It really was more like these recorders were my sketchbook. And I probably would have, if I were sketching anything, it probably would have been inside anyway. I would have been crafting these funny things that I tend to do in my sketchbook. But I think it was just the it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was an overwhelming experience. I was there for a month. I was living in that and it is like a cabin, right? They call it the grotto house, but I was there for a month, and it was just, the beginning was almost relentless. I could not even focus because I just kept having to absorb the world around me. And I think that took a good 2 weeks just to kind of let my brain simmer enough that I could really begin to understand what I was going to do with the material that I was capturing.
God, it's fantastic. Glenn makes a follow-up comment really quickly. He goes, yes, a score. There are so many, there are some very wild scores out there. John Cage, of course, but George Crumb and even Olivier Messiaen. I might be throwing off that pronunciation.
Messiaen. I don't know. I'm not French. I'm probably butchering it too.
Well, Carolyn will chime in a second and tell us how to say it. And then Joseph Barbaccia says sketching with sound, which I like because it sort of kind of captures the vastness of the space, right? More so than I think sketching in a small book in response to such a vast space. But
yeah, and also, I mean, the sketching, it's like, there's so many ways it's like that, because in some ways just having the recorder, you're making choices based on where you're pointing it, right, where you're recording at what vantage point. But then when I was coming back into the grotto house, it was really about layering and patching these things together to tell a story. So then the sketching really begins.
Sure. I love this juxtaposition of slides that you have here. So we've got this image of the inside of the grotto house, and then this image to sort of highlight the locations of your speakers in the space. Can you talk a little bit about what you were setting up here?
Yeah, that I really just wanted to show, because it's with those red walls, it's a little bit hard to see where those speakers are. So this was a bit of a sense of how and there's two speakers you can't see because they're just out of the frame. But this was the room that I was editing in. And then there happened to be these two cots, and there were these bed rolls that went on top of the cots. And so if I were ever having anybody over, I would set those up, and they would lie down and listen and just get completely swallowed up by this work. I was sitting and editing mostly, but sometimes I would lie down and just kind of try to get a sense of how the sound was moving around me, and how I was placing it in that space. I always found that sort of lying down is kind of the best way to experience it. The way we listen is so directional based on the direction of our ears. And I kind of like that idea of your ears facing up rather than your ears facing out.
Interesting. Yeah, because at least when you're thinking about it from the standpoint of listening to music, there's a visual stage that sort of begins to appear in front of you. But in the sense of a surrounded sound, I could see how that pointed direction, especially given the location of the speakers, would be more effective.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Terri.
No, I was going to say greater contact with the vibration too, because more surface area is in contact with the ground or the bed. So.
Absolutely, and I think I find too that you try to be open when you're doing this editing, but I'm facing one direction while I'm editing. And so inevitably I'm editing mostly for these speakers in front of me. Right. So I would actually, anytime I had someone over, I actually had them face the opposite direction than I edited, because then they're sort of listening. And I actually found almost every single time, for me, the work sounds better when I face the direction opposite that I was editing. And I think it's just because I'm noticing things in a different way. It's a really funny phenomena that I'd never really experienced before in my own work.
Alan Wexler is asking a question. He says, I assume this is a residency of one. Did you find the loneliness helpful, or do you prefer residencies with other artists?
It's funny because, that's a great question. Because my last sabbatical, they were all tons of people. I was in these group settings and doing all this work with other people, which I love doing that. I really love that kind of interplay. But I think honestly, this one, I think it would have been really hard first of all, it would have been hard with other people because I'm editing all this sound. But also I felt like I needed to process so much and that I really enjoyed going out on the trails by myself, coming back, really thinking about it. And so I think the solitude of this one was really an important part of it. My wife came for a week, Nancy came, and that was amazing, because then I kind of share some of these things with someone else. So there was a moment where I was able to share what I was doing. There's also sort of a joke that I feel like if she didn't come, the only portraits of me would have been of my microphone, not me, because I took so many pictures of this microphone in these different places, but like no pictures of myself. So she became also a really excellent documentarian during her stay.
That's great. Well, the microphone also functions like this little friend,
Yes.
right? It's like this little,
Totally.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. I'm so excited to play this video. Do you want to talk about it at first so people know what to listen to?
This set the tone for my entire residency. So the first thing I did when I got there, I took a little walk when I got there the first day, but really I was setting up my studio. The second day I went out, I took a hike to this place called the Emerald Pools, and there's these three, like lower, middle, and upper Emerald Pool. And you go up to upper Emerald Pool, and keep in mind it's February. You go up and there is just there's a phenomena that you see in canyons and in Zion Park for sure called seeps. And a seep is basically where the water is filtering down through, for like thousands of years, filtering down through the sandstone. And then it hits a part where it can no longer seep, where I think it's like the Kayenta Formation. If anyone from Zion is here, they're probably going to yell at me because I'm probably getting the geology wrong. But it hits an impermeable layer and it just goes horizontal until it finds a way out. And so what you see along this, in that image, you see that black stripe, and all of those white little slash marks are giant icicles that have formed from this seep. And so what you'll see in this video is that every day at around 9 o'clock, the sun peaks up over the canyon, sweeps this wall, heats the whole thing up, and it just starts dropping all of these massive icicles onto the stones, onto the other ice, onto this frozen lake below. And that really was like, that kind of set the tone for me in terms of the intensity. Like, this is not Disneyland. This is a dangerous place, and it's intense. And so for me, it was like, that really kind of started me off thinking about that, and really set the tone for the beginning of my stay.
All right, so put your headphones on if you have them, or turn your volume up, because we're going to play. This is a time lapse, correct, John?
Right. So I should say that it's a time lapse, and then I've overlaid the sound of the icicles falling. So they're not in time with one another, but you'll get the idea.
Yeah. All right, so grab your headphones. Here we go. Let's give this a shot. Fantastic. It's so powerful.
And imagine that with 8, in the middle of 8 speakers and having this and a subwoofer. Like, it is intense.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought at one point I could see something fall in that video, but it being a time lapse, I don't think I did.
No, you did. There's actually one you can see go.
Yeah, that's what okay, I thought I saw it. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bunch of comments coming in. Let's see. Fuzzball. Wait, that's a new viewer. Fuzzball.
Fuzzball.
I love that. Fuzzball says
That's Ranjit. I know who that is.
says
That's
so
Ranjit.
crunchy. So Ranjit says so crunchy. Joseph Barbaccia says amazing.
Cali Day, YouTube.
That is extremely visceral from Callie over on YouTube. Yep, and John Park, very cool. So yeah, I think they and Joseph Barbaccia asks before we showed that did John get a recording of the falling ice? So yes, of course. Let's keep going because I love this picture.
There's a picture of you.
Yeah, I included this because I think one of the things, COVID sort of disrupted the artist in residence program a bit, and in terms of the kind of contact you could have with people. But one thing that they do is they give you your volunteer jacket and you get your volunteer cap, and they encourage you to wear these things as you go out and do your work. And it was really fun. Like, first of all, like when Nancy and I were walking around, we'd be walking down the trail and everybody'd be smiling at us. And Nancy's like, wow, everybody here is so friendly. And then we realized, oh, it's because I'm dressed like a ranger. So, it was really nice because that is definitely one of the things that one of the missions of this program is that you're interfacing with people and you're sort of talking about the artist in residence program and the way that this is another aspect of preservation of the park. So there I am. This is at a place called Coal Pits Wash, which was quite beautiful.
Gotcha. So let's see. So we've got some images of your microphone.
Oh yeah, so there were a lot of wild turkeys around, which was awesome. So they were a little bit hard to record because, of course, you get close to them and they would gobble off, actually they would peep. They make these great little peeping sounds. But there's my microphone. So if you go to the next slide,
yeah, I want to talk
see
about
like
this.
it's my little Muppet microphone. But this was also, again, another excuse for me to really explore this idea of ambisonic sound. So as you can see from that recorder, it's got these 4 capsules. And the idea is essentially that from these 4 capsules, you can reproduce a sphere of sound. So this idea that, you're essentially using different kind of digital processes to reconstruct a 3-dimensional space in sound. And so this was also just an excuse, another excuse for me to kind of really figure out and incorporate that into my work.
Gotcha. And so here we're going to see it in a number of locations. And
yes, we got, and the second one on the top, the one in the middle, I came a hair from losing that microphone into that ice. Like the ice suddenly opened up and I just somehow managed to swipe and grab. I mean, I was really happy it had that furry thing on top because it gave me something to hang on to. But so I was recording a lot of things. You'll see here that one of the things I was not doing was shying away from the man-made. That was really, I think, important in this work, is that the human impact is a really critical story. So this idea of recording electricity, recording cars, recording the shuttles. The shuttles are a big part of Zion. All of these things also tell something about this story.
Jamie Foster, artist, says your microphone is like your Wilson from Castaway.
I was thinking the same thing.
Absolutely, yes.
That's
if you could take Wilson and mesh Wilson with Beaker from the Muppets.
Yeah, your dead cat on the top, yeah. That's beautiful. Let's see. So the next slide we have is that slide where we're listening to 3 individual recordings. And so just so I can tell the watchers out there, those of you who are watching the show, this is a little tricky for me because we're going to try and play 3 audio files at the same time, 3 video files at the same time. So I'm going to switch scenes and things are going to go black for a second while I set that up, but just bear with me for a second because I really want this to work as
Yeah, the third one takes a little while for me to warm up there. Yeah, finally got that tunnel to explode there. So the idea here was that one of the things I was interested in is just it's a canyon, right? So there's so many echoes. Like this is an echoey environment, and but so many different kinds of echoes. So one of the thing that I decided to do was to bring this is a technique tried and true to basically measure the reverberation of a space. And so what you do is you get a balloon, you pop it, which is a very short, very loud impulse. And you take that impulse and you record the result. So you record the balloon popping and then you record the resulting echoes. And what that allows you to do is you can then take that echo profile and you can model it digitally and sort of recreate the reverb of that space. So I've just got a few slides here that we can kind of take a look at some specific examples. So there's 4. One is the Grotto House where I was working. The one on the top right was along something called the Taylor Creek Trail. And then the 2 on the bottom were from a hike that I did up a place called Pine Creek, where I went way up on the saddle next to it. And so the next one are these 3 different impulses. So we can just play them one at a time. You get a sense. And what you're seeing on the top is the waveform. So that's just how loud it is and the time. And the colorful bit is basically showing you its spectral information. So it's showing you where the pitches are, where the energy is at different pitches. So you can see if it's really yellow, it means it's louder. If it's purple, it's quiet. So it goes from sort of bright to dark and etc. We can just
we're gonna hear the various reverbs in these spaces as you measure them, essentially.
Yeah, so here you're going to just hear the balloons popping in these 4 places.
So here's inside the Grotto House. Here is inside Taylor Creek, or in the Taylor Creek Trail. I love that one. Pine Creek Site 1. And Pine Creek Site 2. Very different.
Mm-hmm. Really different. And what I love too about looking at the spectral information, it's something you would never even see in that waveform. Like you can't see the information in the waveform. So like the one on the bottom right was super surprising when I popped this balloon, because it just popped and then it was like, okay, there was some reverberation, but like no echo. And then there was this wall, like this wash of sound. So you can see that sort of big like pyramid on the right side of that. It was just this one face that was pushing all the sound back at me. So it was always surprising, and places that I thought would sound really amazing didn't, and places that seemed like there would be no echo would have these incredible characteristics. So that was like a really unusual way to experience that landscape. And one thing I will point out, because I did have someone on my Instagram ask this question, which is an important one, is that did you go and pick up all the little bits of balloon?
Yes, and actually that is one of the questions in the chat right now. So yes, did you have to hunt for and pick up little rubber scraps after each balloon explosion?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. And it's been funny because actually since I've been home, I keep pulling them out of my pockets and out of my bag. And it's like, they're just everywhere. I would grab them and stuff them in whatever, pocket I had available. But yeah, they're really serious about the leave no trace at Zion, which is really great.
I love that.
Yeah, you rarely see any trash, and they have people going around picking stuff up all over the place.
I want to just run down these comments really quickly, then I want to keep moving because I don't want to lose sight of what we're talking about with the reverb in these spaces. But Jamie Foster says you hear the birds going crazy after the various booms. John Park has a real technical question here. He says, what convolution reverb plugin did you use to load the impulses in?
You know what? I actually bought one. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I bought one while I was there, because one of the things you can do it pretty easily, and you could do it in Adobe Audition, you could do it in Ableton Live. They have sort of built-in ways to do that. But there is one called Ambiverb that is by a company called Noisemakers, and it allows you to take a multi-channel file. So all you're seeing is one channel of this, but these were actually recorded ambisonically. So you could actually load this reverb to an ambisonic convolution reverb and get, like, if the echo is more on your right, you would theoretically be able to experience the spatial dimension of that echo too. So that That's a great question.
Wow. And then Pumpkin Audrey says, just really cool. And Joseph Barbaccio wants to know, what does the y-axis indicate?
Let's see. It's actually, I mean, the X, Y, and Z are really like, left and right, front and back. So that's the X and the Y. And then the Z is vertical, but the W is the one that's confusing. The W is actually, it's omni. It's basically like a mono signal that all of these are sort of added into a mono signal. So it's a really, and I don't know if anybody knows anything about mid-side recording, which I know very little about. It's the same kind of principle.
Gotcha. So then you're taking these various reverb profiles and tell us what you're doing with them.
Okay, so then one of the things, because I have been, one of the important parts of this was kind of, immersive storytelling, and I wanted to interview people, I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to sort of let the canyon kind of speak, right? So let the sort of, when I'm interviewing people, what if I were able to apply the reverb of really specific places in the canyon to the voices of the people that I've interviewed? And so, that idea of actually, instead of just using a canned reverb, well, what if I use, the reverb from a cave or the reverb from a slot canyon for someone's voice? So this is a guy who's just fascinating, from the University of Utah in Salt Lake. And he is a geologist who's been studying the reverberation and kind of tension of natural bridges. And so he actually goes and he monitors them with really sort of incredibly sensitive equipment, and then takes that data and sonifies it, turns it into sound. So you essentially hear these bridges sing, which is incredible. So this is just a little clip of him talking about helicopters.
They pass by pretty quickly and they have this big Doppler shift.
Okay, and so then the next slide, we'll hear the reverb from these three spaces applied to Jeff's voice.
They pass by pretty quickly and they have this big Doppler shift. They pass by pretty quickly and they have this big Doppler shift. They pass by pretty quickly and they have this big Doppler shift.
I like how that one carries on.
They pass by pretty quickly and they have this big Doppler shift.
Huh. It's funny how when you consider the wall in the visual imaging of this that you were talking about, you can almost sense that in the way the voice trails off. You can almost feel it there. It's really quite fascinating.
Yeah. And also, I mean, they're limited. Like, they're not, it's much easier to get a good recording and a good impulse response from a closed space without a lot of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm recording and there's one of the things, it's like you become so incredibly sensitive to airplanes. Like every time I was recording one of these things, it was like, there goes the airplane, and I have to wait for the airplanes to go over, or even just birds or a river or wind. Like all of these things then would muddy it up. So they're imperfect for sure, but still sort of have the residue of that space. Gotcha. So I had recorded, I must have captured about 25 of these, everything from like, old homesteader cabins to canyons to gullies to tunnels to caves, all different kinds of places.
Gotcha. You have some interesting people profiles on
yeah
here.
So this was really where the research I did up front was super helpful, because I was able to make a lot of contacts before I came, and then I was able to make more contacts when I was there. But one of the things that was really important to me in this work was that our national parks are sites of displacement. They're the traditional land of indigenous people who had that as their home, and Zion is no exception. And the history of the Southern Paiute people is one that's so tied up to that land. And so I wanted to ensure that as I'm telling this story, one of the things that was really important to me is to put their voices first, and as opposed to a footnote, a historical like, oh, and by the way, back in the day, there were these other people here. But instead, no, these people are still there. They're incredibly vibrant and tenaciously sort of bringing back their culture back. And so I wanted to ensure that their voice was prominent in this work. So that's Shannon and Daniel in that picture. There's also obviously, this is Utah. There's a deep sort of Mormon history, the Mormon pioneers, the Spanish. Hal Cannon is an incredible guy. He was the state folklorist for Utah. He was a filmmaker, a radio producer, a storyteller through various kinds of media, an incredible multi-instrumentalist. And Hal, we talked about all kinds of things, one of which was his own sort of family's background in the Mormon church and his history with that. But then also really as a musician, what does it mean to live in a place like a desert or a canyon? And how does that impact your listening? Jeffrey, who I talked about, who does the work with bridges. Greer Cheshire is an author, but also was a park ranger at Zion for many years, as well as the Grand Canyon.
Cool.
Kyla Topham, she actually got in touch with me while I was there because she heard I was doing a talk, and she is blind. And she said, like, someone told me about this, and I'm wondering if there's a way that I can experience your work, because this sounds like something that is art that I actually can understand and really connect to. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. So I met her. She took the shuttle up. She came over, and we spent a couple hours. I was playing her things. We were talking. I interviewed her. So that was just one of these things, just like, oh man, I couldn't believe that happened. And then this guy, the last guy there, these are just a few of the people I interviewed, but another funny thing is that here I am, a sound guy, and every morning these construction guys would be in front of my place, and they would be hauling all this incredible, huge equipment. They were essentially redoing the waterworks for the park. And so they were super wonderful and respectful. And so I interviewed him too. Like, what does this idea of infrastructure mean in terms of the park?
Wow, time is flying for us. Let's jump over to tools. Let's talk about some of your tools.
All right. So this is Reaper. This is definitely has been a cornerstone, but I'm also using Ableton Live a lot, and I'm just kind of working with different kinds of tools. So on the next slide is this tool that I've been fiddling with called XP4L, which is an Adobe Live. It's a Ableton Live plugin that allows you to really spatialize sounds and sort of fly them around an array of speakers, which has been fun. So again, just another reason to explore different tools.
Gotcha. So essentially what's happening with that ball is it's sort of moving the sound amongst and around the speakers, correct?
Yes, it is the sound source, and it is moving around those speakers. So I could have like 8 of those going on at the same time and having them moving around that space.
Fantastic. Let's see.
Oh, so this next thing, we don't even, if you want to play a little bit of it, maybe we just listen to a little bit of Daniel Bullett's, like a minute, maybe just do that first minute bit.
Yep.
So this is a piece that the first thing that I edited that was it's a 15-minute piece, and it features all of those things we saw in the last slide, but one of them is part of an interview with Daniel Bullett, so you'll see there, and it's all about this idea of water.
So I'm going to just play the timestamp from 6 to 7 minutes or so.
Sure.
I'm going to have to jump ahead to that.
And the beginning is all of that ice sound.
Okay, here we go. It's going to take a second to catch up. There we go.
Zion to the Southern Paiutes was a place of spiritual connectedness, a place of a spiritual awakening, because of how tall the hills were and how when the wind blows there, they make certain noises and sound. Almost scary to a point.
So that was 6 to 7 minutes. That's really amazing. I mean, the panning, I'm assuming that this is designed more for a 7.1 or a larger system of speakers, but even just on a 2-channel headset, the spatiality that's created is beautiful.
Yeah, that's a bit of a challenge, even just going from 8 speakers and getting a decent binaural mix. But that's a whole other it's a whole other conversation.
Huh. There's some stuff popping into the chat that I want to make sure we get to, and I don't want to leave off any slides here either, but especially the one of your studio. I want to get that one up. But let's see. Don't worry, Pumpkin, Audrey, and Ben. I'm going to get to your questions in a second. But Joseph Barbacci is like a great beginning to a story I want to hear more about. Let's take a look really quickly at this absolutely fantastic camera.
This is awesome.
So
Yes.
John has this amazing camera, and what you're about to see is not an image, it's a video. So I'm going to play it, but then I'm actually going to manipulate it. I'm going to be moving my mouse around.
Not a good idea. We've always worried about building in the floodplain, but the cliff seemed like a safer place, and now.
John, tell us about this camera.
So this is a Insta360, kind of, not a super high-end camera, but super effective. So all of those things that I was popping the balloons were all shot with that and then re-edited to sort of pan through that scene. But I found like, oh, wow, this is a really nice way to capture what my studio looks like. So in terms of what we're looking at, one of the tricks for me is to really continue this editing of this work in my studio. So you'll see all the speakers on the ceiling, the speakers on the floor. So this is me sort of rethinking and reworking, continuing to work on this stuff with my studio as my editing, my audition room.
I'm curious, why do you put in the 2 rear channels there? Why is one flipped over? Is there a strategy there?
No, just me not really. I think one of them actually has a hook in the bottom of it, so I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't put it in. Yeah, thank you for catching that.
Well, no, I wanted to be
that.
privy to some new technique that I might have been missing out on.
Yes, it's like super speaker inversion, we'll call it.
Gotcha. Let's see. Callie Day says, I've been following your mission on Instagram, and it is fantastic to see some of the outcomes of your process. Do you have another resource where folks can listen to some of those interviews in full? Now, I'm not sure if your website has that or not. Does that have that?
No, I mean, my hard drive is like this compendium of all of this stuff at the moment. And really it's a good question if I'll ever make them entirely available, but yeah, right now it's all just living on my hard drive, but I'll definitely be putting the stuff out at some point. And one of the things is Zion will be putting the finished work at some point up on their website too.
Good.
So there will be stereo versions of these that you can experience. And I really want to get of course, one of my aims is to have an opportunity to play this stuff out in its sort of eight channel, glory at some place so that people can really experience them the way they were meant to be experienced.
And if you want to get over to John's website to see more from his sketchbooks to other projects he's engaged in, you can hit up his website, johnroach.net. John, what do you have coming up before we get off the air?
Yeah, so we can just flip through these. The next thing is a residency called the Teton Arts Lab in Jackson, Wyoming. And this is like, if you had the record scratching sound effect here, this would be like now for something completely different. This one I've made a bunch of working with some fantastic research assistants, made these funky horns, 3D printed horns, and people will essentially be converting lies into Morse code and then playing them into the stratosphere. And that's sort of this. And then there's this little risograph printed instruction book that each of them get. So they get a little kit, which I like, this idea that the participants get a little bit of a sort of like a gift bag as part of the project.
I love that.
And that really was sort of, this is the Frozen Words project that you guys saw. And this is a bit of a continuation of some of those ideas, this idea of media sort of spinning around the globe where it can sort of pop up and explode, repeatedly over time.
And I love this. Can we just get into this real quick?
Yeah. So part of this Yeah, so part of this, I was interested in this idea of working with augmented reality a little bit. And this idea, I was interested in this idea of language that's kind of spinning around the globe. This is based on these sort of beliefs of that Charles Babbage, sort of great grandfather of the computer, had this idea that sounds, once they were made, would just be spinning around the globe forever. And all we needed to do was have the way to hear them. And so I thought, well, as part of this, well, how about if I have the ability to have someone see all of this language spinning around the globe? So this was working with another amazing research assistant who's crafting these things in Unity so that you can use a phone to kind of see these things happening. So the next one is a bit easier to understand, which is that, so imagine you go out and you see this, this text that's kind of orbiting around you. And in this case, your presence, the closeness with which you get to the text causes it to get agitated. So it's almost like your sound waves begin sort of disturbing that text. So the further back you get, the easier it is to read. And the closer you get, the more it begins to sort of twist and contort that. So in this, what you'll have is, imagine like overhead, like Morse code going, and this text of Charles Babbage, and I think we're going to convert some of it to binary too. So this idea of different kinds of encryption in media.
Oh shoot, sorry.
Yeah, so we'll see. This is just more of an idea that we're playing with, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Well, I love what's going down. I wanted to just, maybe since we're coming to a close, should we end on this one?
Sure. This is just, I happened to be there was an amazing snowstorm while I was there, and it doesn't happen very often that you get a big snowstorm in the canyon and it sticks. And this was that case. And I was up hiking when I really got blasted with snow. So I did a time lapse and just captured some of that, I felt fortunate to have gotten that, see those clouds sweep in.
This is beautiful. Mm-hmm. Well, John, listen, this was fantastic, and I cannot wait to tune into some of the newer stuff, the newer residencies that you're going to do. This is definitely a fantastic sabbatical that you're.
Maybe you should join us after the next one.
Do you want to join us after the next one?
Well, it'll be the next two. So
or fine.
I'm back. Yeah, I'll be back in June. So okay. I would love to talk about, because the third one, which I didn't get to talk about, is all about bees. So it's like a whole other thing.
Yeah, I want to get into that. I would really love to talk about that. So good. So everybody, we can look forward to talking to John again after the next two are over with. John, thanks so much for this tonight. This was fantastic. We love.
It's a pleasure.
With you. It was really.
You guys are great hosts. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. We'll be in touch with you. And those of you who want to follow John's Instagram, I'm going to put that up on the screen before we go back to our main screen. But at John Roach Art. John, have a great night. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Take care. Cheers. All right, and we're going to go back to the main for a few seconds. Whittemore's popping up again. There you go, Carolyn. See, we did plug you. And Fuzzball, thanks for the follow.
Thanks for the follow, Fuzzball.
We love that. We hope you'll be back for more. So for those of you that are here to watch John tonight, you're going to see him again. So definitely leave a follow.
Yeah.
This was good.
This was very good.
Shoot, we forgot to get to Pumpkin Audrey and Ben's questions about that. I can tell you this, Pumpkin Audrey, in answer to your question about what does John listen to in the studio, I've got sort of an answer to that. Not really, but sort of. John, every year around the holidays, puts out a holiday playlist of sorts, but he sends it to his friends and it's available for download. So he curates this massive, unique playlist of the coolest stuff you could, like music, and sends it out to all of his friends. And then you just download it. And if you're lucky enough to be on that, you get the playlist every year. Huh. So, send me an email. I'll see if, he's willing to put you on the list. But it's good stuff. And Ben, I believe the answer to your question is no. He has not, other than for his own video and work. Ben's question was around whether or not John has actually ever done any sound work for film. But if you tune in on the next one, I promise to get to that question. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Joseph Barbaccia, thanks so much, John. John Park says this was great. Loved the work and the conversation. Pumpkin Audrey, thank you, Todd and Terry. And thank you, John, for sharing your work. Ben Hagenbush says you do really amazing work, John. Jess Park says this was incredible. Loved it. Thank you. Fuzzball, thanks, John. And thanks, Todd and Terry. Thank you, Fuzzball. Mars Solis, thanks so much. And going down the list, Carolyn Thou says thank you. Yeah, you guys are awesome. We really appreciate it. Pumpkin Audrey's loving on our Ukrainian flag, which will fly. It's going to stay up there. Well, anyway, next week we've got a great show for you, so we're looking forward to that. So join us for Jessica Brilli, and looking forward to having John back.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
So
It's going to be good.
all right, everybody, join us next week for episode 83.
83.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a great night. Where's the button?